You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Mission Log Prodigy, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. Episode 8, Time Amok.
Welcome into another episode of Mission Log Prodigy, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm Ashley Victoria Robinson.
And I'm Norman Lau. Just like on our flagship Mission Log podcast, each week here on Mission Log Prodigy, we discuss each and every episode of this animated series, discover what makes each of them special, and they are indeed special, and see if there are any morals or meanings or messages that we have learned.
This week it is episode 8, Time Amok. Not Amok time, not Time Amok, Time Amok. Please remember that every Mission Log Prodigy is an in-depth review podcast. So if you have not yet seen Time Amok, you may want to put it on pause. We'll wait. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Watch the episode, of course. Welcome back. So happy to have you.
Hey.
And then just stick around and hear us talk about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And this show, like Mission Log, the main show, is both for YouTube and as a regular podcast. So be sure to engage the like button and subscribe button to Mission Log Prodigy on the Roddenberry YouTube entertainment channel. And please make sure to listen on podcasts.roddenberry.com or Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, all the podcasts, wherever you enjoy your Roddenberry podcasts. And you can also follow Mission Log Prodigy on Twitter at ML_Prodigy to keep up with all our latest news and updates. And let me tell you something, Ashley.
Tell me.
First of all, our Twitter community there is fantastic. But second of all, there is so much excitement and energy and positivity and sharing and sometimes spoilers, and we try to be respectful of that. But there's just so much going on there. I'm just enthusiastic about it.
I want to commend you for really taking control of handling the spoiler narratives, because I think that Trek fans, maybe more than any other fans, we really want to talk about it right away, and we want to dive deep. And you and I have the privilege of getting to do this with one of our closest friends every single week. So we are really spoiled, but people on Twitter always want to come. And I think that you do a really commendable job at keeping things surface level or reference-y so that we don't spoil things until a week later, which I think in a weekly show is sort of a respectable amount of time, but also everybody sharing all of the energy and vibes that the younger listeners are bringing to this show. All the Murph plushies I've seen.
Oh my God.
Really,
God.
Just soothes my soul. It's why, honestly, my favorite part of the show is when I get to come to the episode and listen to all of the voice messages that we get. So they're just better than us, Norman. I don't know what to say.
Oh, and remember, hashtag stuffed Murph is canon. That's a thing, especially because of this show. Or this episode, I should say.
Give it to me now. Yes. Oh my God. Okay. But before we jump in, before we get too deep, before Norman and I spoil everything, speaking of spoilers, here is why
right?
I know this podcast is super unique. We want to hear from you, especially the younger fans. At 21, Norman and I are too old to be talking for this long on our own. And if you would like to share your thoughts with us, I know we only get a little bit of time. Please send us a 1 to 2 minute voice message. People do a really, really good job at respecting the time limit, and send that to missionlog-prodigy@roddenberry.com. That's missionlog-prodigy@roddenberry.com. And there's a couple things for you to answer in your questions. What is your first name and your age? My name is Ashley. I am 21 years old. Did you like the episode? Of course I did. I'm not a monster. What was your favorite part? I will talk about that later because I'm hosting this show. And what did you learn? I learned that I'm a really good liar in this segment. We are... We're so looking forward to hearing your comments. I think we've made that super clear this episode. They will be featured at the end of the show. And to start things off, Norman and I are going to answer the same question. So Norman, did you like the episode?
Before I get into that, Ashley is just holding back a reservoir of emotion right now. So before we get way into it, yes, I was blown away by this episode. Usually I'll really like it or I'll really, really like it. I was not ready for the emotional weight at the end of this episode, and putting it all together, it was just amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, I would describe myself as devastated by it. And I don't know if I might cry by the end of this episode. We'll see. But I mean that like as a high compliment. So I hope that's made clear by the end of our podcast today. What was your favorite part of the episode, Norm?
Oh, easily just kind of like the family shot of Rocktog and the hug at the end. I wish Murph was there. Murph eventually got there, just kind of like dropped in from the ceiling or wherever Murph was. I just loved it. It was just such an earned moment. Like the entire Scooby-Doo gang was all together. You know, they defeated the problem and then, you know, they unmasked the problem. And now they're all, you know, those darn kids are all together now as a team. Runner up, though, and also ran, though, in a very high moment. When Rocktog plugged the contraption together, it had the same the same music cue as when she pushed the Delta. So thank you, Nami, for giving us that music cue, because that is all the feels all the time. How about you?
And that's just such intelligent storytelling from all the creatives. My favorite, I know we're going to talk more about it later, was Gwen's log or message to Rocktog. We talk a lot about their relationship and their sisterhood, and it was just epitomized in this very real way. And that was where I started to cry until the end of the episode, pretty much, when Janeway absolutely gutted me. So lastly, what did you learn?
Trust your friends, trust your team, trust Janeway. That's pretty much it. Yeah. Right.
Very, I think it's very true. I would like to raise my truly tremendous coffee cup in a salute to, it's like the size of my face, in a salute to trusting Janeway. I think mine is very similar to yours. I learned that working together doesn't always look the way you imagine. Teamwork has obviously been a theme running throughout this series and in this episode, and we see it presented on the holodeck again in a very straightforward way. And then we have to bring this lesson to the screen through the power of time travel. And it really drove that home for me this week.
Yeah. And what I love about the last 3 episodes we've seen so far, and maybe it's an underlying current or theme that's in these 5 episodes from episode 6 to episode 10, you're seeing all these moments of how do we become more of a team individually and together. And, you know, with Kobayashi and then First Contact, and then now all of these lessons are starting to coagulate. If that's too big of a word, come together. They're all coming together to make this one definitive moral statement. And I think that is absolutely beautiful.
Something I'd love to discuss with you, but probably about, I don't have a watch, 2 episodes from now. I really think that this chunk of 5 episodes, like, is such a huge changing and growing point and such a big step forward from the first 5 episodes. And I loved the first 5 episodes. So it's going to be neat to do it broken up into chunks. And I'd love maybe at the end of 10, if we kind of digested how this arc stood up next to this first arc.
Oh, I think that's a great idea. And definitely something for maybe a supplemental later on.
Ooh, I love that.
I love Ashley being able to keep everything reserved, because she's going to go right into the recap and then she's going to let out all her enthusiasm with observations and morals and meanings and messages. So thanks, Ashley, for your answers. I hope you appreciate all of our answers, and this gets you like inspired to send in your own young cadet viewers. But for now, here's Ashley with the recap.
Ooh, if they're cadets, what ranks are we? Tell us on Twitter, because I'm going to recap Star Trek Prodigy Episode 8, Time Amok for you. It is written by Nikhil S.J.R.M. I hope I pronounced your last name right. You have a fabulous name either way. And is directed by Olga Ulanova and Sung Shin. And here we go. Training Officer's Log opens the show. That was cool to get Janeway doing both the captain's log and not, but she's worried about the crew's recent failures, as we've seen. On the holodeck, the Protostar crew is presented with a task: a fox, a chicken, and a bag of grain. Take it across the river. NBD. Rocktog has the fox. Foxes are my favorite animals. All of my favorite things are together in one frame, and it makes me very happy. Everybody chases everything. There is a lot of chaos to launch this episode. Gwyn, during the chaos, calls Rocktog a security officer, and Rocktog shoots back that she doesn't want to be called that. Another failure on the holodeck leaves Janeway encouraging everyone present to work together as a crew. Otherwise, they won't be able to accomplish anything. This is when Dal chooses to admit that they're not cadets. And then he even admits that they sold the Protostar. What? Huge deal. And when they leave, only Zero stays behind to explain how this happened and what this really means to Janeway. starting a closer relationship I'm very interested in. Then we cut to the diviner accepting Nandi's information about the protostar. We saw that in the last episode. Moving continuity. Thank you, Deep Space Nine. The location where the protostar jumped to is months and months away from his current location, but there are other ways to make his presence known, and the vehicle replicator aboard the protostar gets to work immediately. You see these creepy little hands. The protostar heads directly into a tachyon storm, Star Trek alert, and gets a lovely moment with Jankum where he gets to talk about his feelings and explore why Jankum actually wanted to join Starfleet. What's the problem with tachyon storms? They mess with gravity. What's keeping the protostar drive in place? Gravity. So Jacob has to run off to the engineering section, and Janeway lets him know that this crew belongs to her, whether or not they are cadets. After all, she is there to help. A big tachyon wave hits, and it sends everyone into new timelines. Woo! And then Jacob and Janeway explode, and we are like halfway through the episode. She doesn't really explode. She's a hologram, so can she really die? A question for another day. Janeway appears in a new timeline where Rock Talk is. So this is, by default, the best timeline or best part of the timeline. And she's hiding in the mess hall. The engine doesn't look good, but Janeway projects this very cool graphic explaining the split timelines, and it does look good. It's a very elegant way, I think, to kind of explain how they are all in temporal relations to each other. The warp containment drive needs to be recalibrated or everyone's going to explode all over again. Overwhelmed by this task, Rock Talk tells the computer to get rid of hologram Janeway. It's very sad. Janeway is punted over into Zero's timeline where they already know what's going on and they are already working on a solution because they are on top of it. And here we explain that time moves at a different pace in different places. It's elastic. Zero may not have enough time to solve the problem, but they draw schematics for Janeway to take on her next jump. Who's in the next timeline? Murph, by default, second best timeline. Through the power of Murph, Janeway is almost immediately sent away to Dal's timeline, where the captain is in full slacker mode playing a video game, like the children do. I'm sure he's playing, Roblox. Once Dal jumps into action, he learns that they don't have the right amount of equipment to build Zero's fix. Janeway, of course, has a motivational speech about Apollo 13 and how they worked together. And working with Dal, they decide to use their ingenuity, great word, to build the best solution possible. Developing trust sent Janeway back again in time to Gwen's timeline, where she is making even better progress. We love it. And discovers that the vehicle replicator, remember we talked about that earlier, has been making another killer dreadnought to take down those who had defeated the diviner or stole the ship, or however you want to think about it. Janeway recognizes him because, just like we said, somebody very similar was present when Chakotay's team was defeated. I'm hearing Ashley and Norm guesses from several episodes ago. He is able to effectively delete Janeway again because Dreadnought has Chakotay's security codes, tons of questions around there. The only thing that's basically keeping the diviner from recalling the protostar entirely is the broken core, which we've been working up to this time to fix. Dreadnought makes an accusation that Gwen is the diviner's greatest mistake as his progeny, but she opens a door to space and it sucks the newly printed evil robot out into space where he belongs. It's a hard word to say. This very action causes the warp matrix to be sucked out into space as well, and Gwen ends her battle by recording a captain's log. So we kind of have dueling captains or dueling people of captain status going on in this episode as well. Rock Talk can't bring back Janeway because the program no longer exists. Dreadnought deleted it. So she cuddles up with her stuffed Murph, says goodnight to everyone, and replays the holo program of all her friends on the ship because she's lonely. It's really sad. Then Gwen's captain log comes through as a message for Rock Talk from the future, and it's very understanding of who she is and where she is as a person. It's really sweet. But Gwen needs Rock Talk to do her best to save the world, which she is able to do, and she rewrites Janeway's program after only 276 tries, because if at first you don't succeed, and as she says, it's not that many tries. Together, Rock and Janeway bring the warp matrix with Rock built under Gwen's instruction. There's another purple wave. It races through the protostar. Everybody's reunited. Rock finally gets her hug, the big group hug, and a discussion about job titles. We don't really know how long Rock was stuck in Groundhog Day, but Janeway has both pride and ominous feelings about the time that she spent there. And in the final moments of the episode, Dreadnought wakes up and trouble is forecasted from the next episode. The end.
Ooh, take a deep breath. Take a deep breath, actually. That was a lot.
Look, I think listeners know that I'm fairly new to writing the recaps. This was the hardest one yet.
There was so much going on. There were so many characters getting all the time. That's the one thing about this series that still just amazes me, is that we get all the time with all the characters exactly when we need it, how we need it, when we need it, and it's just, it boggles my mind how everyone in this team keeps all those balls up in the air.
They do it by being a team, by working together as a team.
Oh, so someone's been looking at morals, meanings, and messages. So we're going to jump right into the observations, because there's so much to talk about. Ashley, if you're not watching this on the YouTube channel, you really should, because what Ashley did in the recap was nothing short of actually being a musical on her own, just without the singing. And yes, we would love to see a Prodigy musical, because that would be amazing. I
call Murph. I want to be Puppet Murph.
Right?
I'm available for casting at any time.
It would be like Buffy's Hush, like nobody sings except Murph.
Great. Honestly,
right?
Honestly, great.
And then Murph would sound like, he would sound like Vic Fontaine. So that would be amazing.
Yeah, honestly, I love it.
All right. So let's jump into it. Actually, let's jump into the observations. Obviously, you have a lot to say about it. I have a lot to say about it, but I think we have similar notes. So what do you think? Yeah.
So I want to talk about the title, which is Time Amok, or Time Amok, Amok Time, the OG. It's my favorite TOS episode, or it's among my favorite TOS episodes, because I'm such a hardcore Vulcan fangirl. And I thought that I really think the TOS legacy is being held up in Star Trek Prodigy in this very direct way that you don't always see in the other live action shows, because they already have fully fledged adult characters. And more than any other episode, this one has felt the most like a classic Star Trek episode. And I think that's why I loved every single second of it.
Because we start off with the captain's log-ish type of opening and or trainer's log, and then you have oh my god, the most gorgeous shot, the most gorgeous pan across the screen shot of the protostar going right into a mission proper, going right into kind of like the problem solving. Okay, so because the title is so TOS, because Amok Time is like literally like one of the benchmark episodes of the original series. When you first saw the title, as it was exposed or spoiled on social media, were you expecting something along the lines of a TOS episode, as opposed to actually literally what this episode title means, time running amok?
So even though we do this show, I do try really hard to stay away from spoilers. I don't watch the teasers for the next episode, whether they leak or not. So knowing just that the title was Time Amok, I thought it was going to be a gladiatorial arena style episode, which kind of based on how First Contact went, I should have known better, because First Contact takes the theme and really turns it on its head and presents it in an interesting way. But so no, they look, those tricky Hagemans and there's tricky writers' rooms. They get me every time. Did you have any inkling that this was actually going to be dealing with the dilation of time?
No, I thought that it was just kind of like a play on words. We had Kobayashi, but not Kobayashi Maru. We had First Contact, not First Contact. So there is a little bit. Yeah, no, really there is a little bit of what do you call it? Subversion of expectations. Yeah. But now I'm just like, what? All bets are off. I'm not even going to read anything into anything anymore when it comes to the titles. You actually alluded on this earlier. So we were talking about teamwork. Teamwork is a huge theme. And so once again, teamwork makes the dream work. The chicken fox grain rowboat, that whole scenario, that is literally like management training 101, or in this case like, cadet teamwork training 101. Now, I like that they're still enforcing and still encouraging the whole point of it's not whether or not you win or lose, it's how you come together as a team and trust each other. Huge theme, wonderfully done. I think it was a little telegraphed, though, if you really know that whole the whole model of the chicken, fox, crane, and rowboat routine. I'm just waiting for them to get to the whole fox or turtle and the scorpion motif. that happened, because that's very Voyager-esque. Thank you, Charlene Schmidt, for pointing that out to me in a conversation that I had with her about this, because Scorpion being that great episode of Voyager.
Oh, yeah. Well done, Char.
So you're bringing the Doctor into this a little bit.
We got wibbly wobbly, timey wimey action. I'm a huge Doctor Who fan. It might shock you to learn, also being a huge Star Trek fan. And I really enjoy time travel nonsense. I can totally go with whatever razor thin reason you have for why this is the way it is. But I really feel like Nikhil S. JRM, who wrote the episode, I apologize again about the last name, uses this trope to its highest possible quality in storytelling. Nobody in this episode is together, arguably, right? Sort of where you come down on how much a hologram is a person, how familiar you are with the Doctor. But it still has such meaning and such connection here. And I was very impressed. Prodigy about once an episode, I'm like, is this a kid? This is a kid. This is for children. Holy smokes.
That's what we think, right?
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
So, I mean, I had to evoke the Doctor at some point, both the hologram Doctor and the time traveling Doctor, when we were talking about this. But since we're going into timey-wimey stuff, tell me your thoughts about the technobabble.
Okay, so technobabble and Star Trek Voyager are kind of like hand in hand. I think it's probably the most technobabble-y series that we've gotten.
Says the man currently watching Stargate.
I know.
Full of technobabble.
But the way that Janeway and Janeway and Zero got together to start solving the problem, it felt very Voyager-esque. Like Janeway was talking to, say, Seven, for example, and they're like, techno-babbling out the problem, because it was all about how do we solve it, as opposed to what happened or what didn't happen, or how do we get out of this, or, who's responsible. It was all about just this analyzing the problem. And that the diagram with Janeway, when Janeway and Rock Talk were talking, and she was explaining how science works, how temporal dynamics work, that blew me away. And if we can just get screenshots upon screenshots upon screenshots of people like trying to, do the Doctor Strange thing about, kind of like moving the time orb back and forth, and how it manipulates time from the outer ring to the inner ring. I know someone did their homework. Probably Dr. Erin Mack probably did her homework and got all that stuff right. I don't know what any of this means. All I know is that it made a lot of sense to me in this episode.
Yeah, and I think I'm glad that you shouted out. Kudos to all of the science consultants who have worked on these shows, because at moments like this where it gets where there is science in science fiction, it's so cool. It leads me to ask, like, how good are these? I mean, it's all Star Trek is in the future, right? But this is like future Star Trek. How good are these future replicators? Because I feel like every time we see the vehicle replicator used, it's used in a new way to serve the narrative, but a new way in terms of what we think replicator technology. Like, I had no idea that Dreadnought could have been or was ever replicated. Can we replicate a data? Like, what? I have so many questions. And I'm betting because we've seen it at these emotional heights that the vehicle replicators can be very important in the season finale, which I feel like we'll talk about in about a year.
Also, how did that Dreadnought have all of Chakotay's security codes?
Well, see, this goes back into my is Chakotay shady question. Was Dreadnought like part of that ship? Was he always part of the Divine? I will run down this rabbit hole and I will explode.
Yeah, so was the Dreadnought that Janeway saw in the still image from First Contact, is that the actual Dreadnought that's with the Diviner right now? Are there a bunch of Dreadnoughty?
Yeah.
Just running around doing crazy Dreadnoughty. Or like the Dreadnoughts from G.I. Joe, Zartan's army.
No. Oh, no.
No, that's completely different rabbit hole. But here's the thing. It's like, so this is all happening from 17 years ago until now. So how much influence does the Diviner have over the Protostar? And if he can send like mental commands to create a Dreadnought on that ship, why can't he find it?
Also, if people aren't following Norm or the Mission Log Prodigy on Twitter, I read the rabbit hole that you went down looking up like the etymology of diviner and sort of making predictions maybe about like what the power set or what the motivation is. Like, this is what you get when you hang out with your Prodigy folks outside of this podcast.
We try and get everyone like the opportunity to make their own conclusions. Right?
Yeah. Speaking of people making their own conclusions, I really liked all the Jenkum Pog stuff this episode.
Yeah, right.
He's been our look, Tellarites. I'm no Larry Nemechek. I'm not super hot on the Tellarites generally. They're not my faves. I am hot on Jason Matsoukas, though. He's amazing. So it turns out all you needed was to crash those two things together to create a character that I really like. But he gets to be more than just comic relief here. His only real character moment that sticks out to me previous is when he was talking about the kind of food that he wanted to eat when everyone was replicating their ideal meals. And to have him speak about why he wanted to continue lying about being a cadet and what being in Starfleet could mean for him, I was really touched by. And I think by the end of this whole series, may it go 5 seasons at least, I think he's going to turn into a great leader and a really complex character. And I've been loving seeing the seeds of it. And we just got way more of it in this episode.
Well, a lot of these characters, you have your forefront characters, the characters that kind of help sell the story, and you focus on Rock and Dal and Gwyn primarily right now. But all of a sudden, Murph and Zero and Jankum are all going to come from behind and just take us by surprise. And again, we have, including this episode, we have 12 more episodes to get to see how that happens. I think that Jankum's probably going to be the most prideful wearing a Starfleet uniform if we ever get to that point, because I think he really wants to be that person. I think he really wants to be, it's almost like he wants to belong there the way that Rock Talk wants to belong to a family.
I just imagined Jankum Pog wearing a Wesley Crusher sweater, and it really, really sent me.
Oh, somebody out there make that happen.
Please tag us.
Like a Jake Sisko sweater.
That looks like the LA bus covers. Okay, we got to talk about one more thing, because we both have the same last note about like, who is Janeway now? What is Janeway now? I'd love it if you told me a bit about your theory.
Well, my whole thing with Janeway is that the biggest ask of this entire series so far, does Janeway actually believe the story that Dal has concocted and just admitted to this episode, that they were a group of cadets that needed Janeway's help, but now, after admitting what they admitted, that they're not, that they're fugitives on the run who stole the protostar, who need to get away from the diviner. All of that has been established. Has Janeway, did she buy it and she's just humoring them for some reason that we don't know yet? Or is it because her programming just said these cadets need help and I have to tutor them through this to get them into safety?
I think it's probably a bit of both, but I love the idea that it's the latter, because that's who she was to the Voyager crew. She let these Maquis come and become part of her family. And then she embraced Kess and Neelix and Seven and so many other day players that I can't remember the name of. So, and I think that because we spent so much time this episode addressing that, we're going to see that addressed. And like, I think she might get another hard reboot, or she might be confronted with that in a really interesting way. But this Janeway is effectively a new character now, because Rock Talk had to completely rebuild her. So I'm wondering if she might be I'm interested to see Janeway through Rock Talk's eyes, because arguably that is who this person is now.
Because Rock Talk, like programmers, they put in their own type of code that they know, like writers know, and writers write what they know. Mm-hmm. Rock Talk maybe did that when she reassembled Janeway, right? That's what you're saying. And I agree with that. So Janeway is like, she was like the base AI when they first found the protostar, but Janeway grew, evolved, and then learned. And then all of that data got obviously deleted by, well, we should say to Dreadnought 2. And then all of a sudden, and then, exactly. White Knock. Can I say that? I guess sure. I just did.
I'm white. I'll sanction it.
But Janeway, she's probably going to see things maybe a little bit more empathetically than original programming allowed. But that's something that we can obviously like dovetail into probably one of the more important segments of our show, is looking into the morals and meanings and messages of this episode, because the observations are great, but at the same time, though, this episode it's really hard to kind of sift through what they were trying to say, because there were so many great morals, meanings, and messages. I don't say that as a detriment. I'd say that as an absolute credit to the writers. There are so many great moments in this episode. Let's start with you, Ashley.
Okay, I'm going to evoke Lord of the Rings, which is fitting because before we started recording, Norm and I were talking about Lord of the Rings. This episode really explores the idea that, in the words of Galadriel, even the smallest person can change the course of the future. This, for me, was the first episode that made me actually cry. Young characters always get me. It's why I write YA comic books with young leads. And Rock Talk reflected back for me so much behavior that I recognized from myself over the years. I think a lot of the older, the ancient viewers will feel that when she's like, gets mad that she doesn't want to be called the security officer. She turns the Janeway program off because she like just can't deal with what is happening to her, but ultimately rising to the occasion because that's what she needs to do. And I just wanted to take her in my arms. She's probably bigger than me, but that's okay. And tell her that everything was going to be okay. And then little did I know that the episode was actually going to do that for me. And she gets to be a real Frodo Baggins on this journey where she's like this innocent baby who winds up saving the world. Or, I mean, for them, the Protostar is their world. So
Sure.
She literally saves the world. And like, I just thought it was really nice.
I think the interesting thing about Rock Talk's character is that I think from the very beginning, all the expectations were placed on this is going to be a brute, type of musclehead type character who a lot of people probably thought was a he because of how Rock Talk was originally introduced with a lot of grunting and groaning and, a lot of masculinity behind that character until Rock Talk actually spoke.
And that just also goes to show how we're all socialized.
But yeah, but I think that's a very important part of why Star Trek Prodigy is so important because it shows that these subversions of expectations allow us to grow, like emotionally, mentally, and not to judge people by what they look like as opposed to what's on them on the inside. And I think that with the way that Janeway, from the limited amount of Voyager that I actually have seen, Janeway approaches everybody with a different tone, and I think that's kind of like the perfect example of true leadership. She. Like on Voyager, she didn't speak to Cass and Neelix the same way she spoke to her Starfleet officers, like, Tuvok and Harry Kim and Tom Paris, as she didn't speak to the Maquis characters. She knows exactly how to speak to which person with the right tone in order for them to understand they all have to come together as a team. She didn't speak to Jankum the same way. She didn't speak to Zero the same way. She didn't speak to Rock the same way. But they all understood why what she was saying was so important, because in the end, if they don't work together, they're not going to succeed. And I think that was so sublimely done in this fractured time type of scenario. And
that, I think, really kind of speaks to a theme that I noticed, which is the idea of quality time, which I know anyone who's done their love language recognizes that term, but quality time is my love language. So it really stood out to me that nobody gets any quality time together. And then when they do, how arresting it is. And I think you make a really great observation with how Janeway, also by being a hologram, really personifies that in the way that she treats all of these cadets. And that it's interesting to watch them change to her. Like Zero goes from complete panic to completely under control and in control of the situation as soon as Janeway arrives. Zero is stealthy, so interesting. I hope we get more before the episode break. And then it makes the reunion that much sweeter. And what does it mean that Rock has been gone for all this time? But the idea that, yes, you can be effective singularly, but together, like your fingers make a fist, really struck me. Tell me more. You have Norm's points on this for the leadership. This could be a book, my friend. This could be in the Starfleet captain's rule book.
So another moral that I came away with from this episode, this episode really spoke to me in terms of leadership. I managed, in my previous career, I managed a team of artists for like over 20 years. You always have to approach your team differently to get the best out of them and for them to expect the best out of themselves, and the trust and the foundation of being able to work together towards a common goal. Janeway says you can't let your failure tear your crew apart. This mission can't be done alone. And although we are divided by time in this instance, we can work together. So throughout this entire episode, Janeway, even though she's holographic, still retains the leadership programming matrix of her original personality and knows that teamwork takes consistency. Her interaction with the crew and each of them individually is always consistently not just positive, but constructive and trusting, allowing each one of them to find their own strengths at the right time, and literally at the right time in literal time in this episode.
Yes. Yeah. In real life, I don't think teachers get paid enough. There's my political statement for the episode.
I agree.
And this episode of television illustrates how important teachers are and how paramount they are to everyone's success, because Janeway, obviously she's tasked with trying to guide the new crew kind of from the minute we meet her. And she demonstrates real dedication to that mission in this episode when she learns the truth of how they came aboard the Protostar, embraces them, and continues to instruct them as they need it. Then she literally gets individual conferences with everybody on board across time until Gwyn then kind of picks up the baton of teacher, like a weapon, a baton to help Rock Talk, save the day. And then at the end, we sort of end on this sequence, the camera pulls away where Rock Talk is explaining to everybody else who she might be older than now, what she learned. And it's so fascinating to watch it come full circle. And it begins and ends with Janeway, because Dal can say whatever he wants. Janeway is ultimately still the captain of this ship. And that's the role that she's been included to play. Okay. Take me to church. Take us out of this section.
I love how you said that, say Rock Talk is probably the oldest, and they did make a mention of, is she the oldest in terms of age, or is the oldest because she probably has matured the most in this episode? Perhaps. There is this wonderful kind of dichotomy between the wizened leader and kind of like the brash youth. When Dal put the Matrix together and tried to activate it, he said, here goes nothing. He's already looking for failure. He's already accepting defeat. Janeway says more like everything, because she knows if he succeeds, everything changes. Confidence, the ability to trust exactly what she said and what the team was able to bring to him at that time. When Dal feels like he failed, Janeway tells him that he may not have finished, but you're all in this together. He's just one part of this overall larger puzzle. And another example, again, of Janeway presenting the original lesson of the show, like she was doing at the very beginning, the chicken, the fox, the grain, and the rowboat, right? Each member of Janeway's crew has their own puzzle to solve, like those individual meetings that you were talking about. And they have to trust in each other that they're solving their own part so that the whole of the problem will be fixed. They have their own obstacles to overcome, but each one of them has to trust that they can do that, because once they do that, all the pieces fit together, just like the warp matrix, right? To get the ship moving forward again. But they can only do that by listening to Janeway, the authority figure, in complete contrast to Nandi, who was like the worst authority figure in the episode previous. Trusting each other is how they're going to get to move forward and to push the story along. I know that it was probably maybe a little heavy-handed, which is why I talked about leadership this entire time. But at the same time, though, for younger viewers, I think that's really important to have seen the differences between how a team works, trust in leadership and good leadership, versus what Nandi did by completely tricking every single one of them to doing what she wanted to do and ending up hurting everyone in the end.
And also refusing to be a leader to begin with, right?
Right, because she just wanted to be part of it, but at the same time, though, she wanted to be able to manipulate everyone from behind the scenes. Janeway isn't doing that, and it goes to when Dal said, "You can't trust authority figures. You can't trust Starfleet. Why would we trust them? Adults only hurt us. Not anymore."
Two quick things. One,
sure.
You always pull the best quotes when we do these. I always pull the dumb ones. You always pull the best ones. Two, if it's you, me, and John Champion doing the fox, the chicken, and the grain, I'm giving you the chicken because you're the only one who I believe can handle it.
Well, that means that somebody like maybe Earl is looking at us from the rowboat standpoint.
Earl's definitely in the boat.
Right.
Yeah, he's the one who makes the journey, who guides it. Absolutely. And then Rod is the one just like laughing at all of us, hoping that we can make it.
Wow, that was that's some pretty heady stuff. Really, really important stuff to talk about. And I'm sure that the adult listeners have probably understood what we're saying. And I hope the younger viewers really kind of like take just a closer look sometimes at these lessons, or have basically the perfect dynamic, the perfect temporal storm, if you will, of older viewers or parents discussing these points with younger viewers or their children or their younger siblings or nephews and nieces or whoever's watching them, because that's just what makes this show so special. All right, so we're closing in on the end here, Ashley. We have usually a little bit of time here to wrap up one last larger idea that kind of just maybe we've forgotten about, or maybe it's like the one point that we wanted to end on. So let's end on your note. What was the one last idea that you were left with?
The thing that I keep sticking to, I think unsurprisingly, is Rock Talk and what happened to her in order to save the day. And it proves to me that necessity is the mother of invention, which I definitely wrote wrong in my notes. Learning on your feet is a super hard lesson in life. It's a lesson you learn over and over and over again. It's a lesson we learned when we started recording on Zoom. And it's also a classic lesson in Star Trek. So bonus points for tying those two together. And I really feel like Rock Talk has really dealt a blow in this episode emotionally, but it follows her narrative trajectory from the beginning of both this episode and the series, that she's struggling with the position she wants among the crew, with who she is in this family, and with who she is as a person, and coming through the gauntlet of warp science and a lot of math has turned her into the person that she was always meant to be. I don't think we're going to get a literal transformation because she already looks so amazing, but I think we're going to see her moving forward kind of in a new, I won't say a final form, but a new form. And I hope that that's the way a lot of the younger viewers and listeners take this. Like, this moral meanings messages stuff might seem really heady and really complicated, and you might just be watching and listening to this show because you like the space adventure, but I watched Star Trek when I was a kid, and that stuff percolates and it stays with you, and it's going to help you be a better person too. And I just think that's very special. And I think that's very Star Trek.
It will be interesting to see if there are specific notes for Riley to now act as Rock Talk in her vocal performance, because she is maturing in a certain way. And I think that you and I basically landed on the same point, because it was such a powerful ending moment to try and figure out what was going on with Rock Talk. But in all the episodes up to this, Rock Talk never wanted the weight of responsibility. She was offended and hurt that she was just thrust into this position of security officer. Why? Because she's the brute, because she's the largest, because she's the strongest. Or she didn't want to fix the engine because all of this was above her. All of this was beyond her. It was all too overwhelming for her. And ever since we've known her, she's only just wanted to belong and to have a family, to be accepted, to be loved. But because she was left alone for so long in her own time stream, maybe that was the hard lesson that she had to learn. Because even though you're alone and your friends aren't with you, even though, as she tried to make it as homey as possible in her time stream, it doesn't mean you aren't capable of becoming more, learning more, growing more. The people in your life don't define you. Only you define you. And in being alone and with that log of Gwen's encouragement, this is how Rock Talk has taken her next step forward. I love, like you said before in your earlier notes, how Gwen has finally become the big sister in her relationship with Rock. And in that log, encouraged her to believe in herself and not to let anyone define who Rock is or what she wants. And I think that was a big moment, not just for Rock, but it's a big moment for Gwen too.
Well said. So that's why you go last. Friends, I'm sad to say we reached the end of our show. Thank you for joining us here on Mission Log Prodigy. Thank you for supporting us as we screamed about how cute Murph is in all forms. If you enjoyed our show, please make sure that you like, share, and subscribe to our Mission Log Prodigy playlist on the Roddenberry Entertainment YouTube channel. Just subscribe to all of it, and find us on your podcast catcher of choice. Again, just subscribe to all of it. We do a lot of amazing things here. Mission Log Prodigy is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment, executive producer Rod Roddenberry. And our website and your opportunity to comment and connect with us is at missionlogpodcast.com. And if you would like to support Mission Log directly, and why wouldn't you, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog.
Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to be with us again. And we look forward to discussing the next episode with you after maybe Ashley and I stock up on more boxes of Kleenex, because we don't know what the next episode's going to hold in store for us. Until then, let's see what our younger cadets have to say about Time Amok with this week's very special incoming transmissions.
Receiving listener communications. Message playback begins.
What's your name?
Rook.
And how old are you, Rook?
6.
All right, did you like tonight's episode?
Yes.
What was your favorite part?
When Raktak made the device.
Yeah, you like Raktok saving the day?
Yeah.
All right, and what did you learn?
Never say I can't.
Okay, because if you say you can't, then you've already lost?
Yeah.
So what's your name?
Sarah.
And how old are you?
6.
Did you like the episode?
Yes.
And what was your favorite part?
Where Janeway knew what to do, and she found her from the other ship, then she was bummed.
Oh, man. And so what were they trying to teach us?
To work together as a team.
Okay.
Live long and prosper.
What's your name?
Dietrich.
How old are you?
3.
Did you like the episode of Prodigy?
Yep.
What was your favorite part?
All of it.
All of it. Did you really like the part on the holodeck?
Yeah, you funny? Hi.
It was funny. What did they do? There was a chicken.
And the fox. The fox saw the chicken. The chicken was free. The fox was game. And one, I'm game.
Oh, it said, I'm going to eat you. Oh, my goodness. What was the lesson that you learned from the episode?
Teamwork, make it teamwork.
Oh, that's a pretty good lesson.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.